afternoon, all of the participants. I'm Epiphantseva from PROMT. PROMT is a company that's been tackling machine translation for more than 30 years. We have accumulated a lot of expertise, a lot of experience in machine translation, so I would like to talk about these benefits of neural machine translation. It seems like that we live in a very interesting time. I would compare it with the time of great geographical discoveries, when people, thanks to bringing continents closer together and countries closer, opened new trade routes, which facilitated the entire planet, nations joining together, and it facilitated business and goods transportation. Now we're living through the time when almost all of the goods and services may be available at any point of the world, and you wouldn't have to waste that amount of effort and time for transferring such goods. We have a capability of transferring any item of information through the internet between continents and countries. The only problem that remains is a language barrier problem. The language is the cultural feature, so there will not be less languages. Languages will not disappear, and the language barrier resolution issue will prevail. On the slide, we see that even 20 years ago, to cover 20% of the audience, we would have to be representing information in 13 languages. These days, specialists claim that we need to have 50 languages for that. Also, people say that goods and services should be represented in local languages because people are more willing to buy information, to buy any goods if the information about such goods is represented in their native language, which they know the best. Lots of effort spent in the European Union to provide information in all of the EU languages. At the same time, we see that the revenue of translation companies is also going up in the world, and we see that the translation companies are using artificial intelligence technologies more and more that help them represent the situation in a very short space of time. The decisions about machine translation exist in practice, and they've been in existence for 70 years, and they had been available to the priority group of people, everything which was due to intelligence, security, then followed by scientists, then business with the use of personal computers. And nowadays it's one of the most successful applications of artificial intelligence in linguistics. Over the last 5 years, we've been seeing this new phenomenon, which is about neural machine translation. Because of that, we will have to thank hardware capabilities and neural networks growing. The quality of neural machine translation is much higher than the machine translation which we saw 5–10 years ago. One of the prerequisites, one of the features of the neural machine translation would be that being based on the linguistics, complex linguistics. Machine translation was quite lucky. 30 years ago, translation memory technology started developing when in some institutions, in the companies, there was a chance of accumulating original texts and their translations in the digital form, which was properly structured. These days it's used to train the machine engines that are used for translation. By using this high-quality data, the quality of machine translation almost matches our expectations. Some time ago, a famous conference was conducted dedicated to machine translation. It was also held online this year. There were a lot of words mentioned during the course of the conference when different types of software was used, and people, the interpreters, the translators, would evaluate the quality of machine translation higher rather than the translation done by people. So it seems like that the technology has reached that level when it's capable of resolving lots and lots of tasks. Quality of translation is no longer a problem here in machine translation, but the machine processing of the natural language is a complicated thing, is a complex thing, because of the variety of content or content diversity, if you wish. Different experts participate in creating texts, and different styles are used. The headlines are one language, scientific articles is different type of language, spoken language is different. Of course, it's different types of content, and because of this diversity of content, different models are required so that they would match each particular type of content. The next problem is language asymmetry. Translating from one language into another is not always easy. There are languages, well, in terms of classic linguistics, for instance, which do not always signify a lot of linguistic problems, whereas other languages' translation may show more difficulties. For example, the translation into Russian is very, very challenging because morphologically Russian is a very rich language and mistakes become more noticeable. A Russian language does not resemble English or Turkish because of this language asymmetry. Problems do arise, etc., etc. Lots of questions appear. For example, today, if we take a look at how famous companies and services are tackling translation, we can say that translation may turn out of a high quality and it does not require any editing. I would like to just show you a few examples of how machine translation is used these days. You may have heard this TripAdvisor name, where we have feedback published of those travelers who have visited places, and this site has been translated into 21 languages. Of course, without machine translation, that service would not have existed, because that data would have to be created that way just to attract the audience. The same applies to the support services and client communication. Requests are generated by these people and assistance is required. This is where machine translation is also used. Speaking in terms of international employee cooperation, we need to translate text there as well. While we were having the World Cup here in 2018 in Russia, we were also using machine translation. When the pandemic kicked in, we saw that the number of requirements for translation increased by the factor of 160 times. The whole change of the situation worldwide speak for us needing new technologies in machine translations. And in conclusions, I'd like to say that the need for translation from foreign languages will never disappear. So the opportunities that we're getting now will certainly be required by the market and will find their place in a lot of tasks and initiatives in business and culture and healthcare. So that's why I believe that it's quite an important subject that will never lose its importance until the humankind exists. Thank you for your attention.